All right, week 3, college football for lineups. I'm Jared. That's Pete. You've been with us the last 2 weeks, so I'm not going to get into the pleasantries. But, Pete, we are kind of starting to learn about these teams a little bit as we now get into week 3. Some teams are playing their 4th game this week if they played in week 0. It is kind of intriguing to continue to lay the data points down and kind of see, okay, now this is a good team, this is a bad team. Have you figured out yet your dividing line for, all right, you stink, you're good, or is there still learning to do?
More to the point, it's that the lines are still off because, the world overreacts because you can only go by what you see and you can't unsee certain things. That's more for the NFL than it is for, because, now, oh my God, the Detroit Lions are going to go, 3-14 or, whatever it is. And, everyone overreacts. In college, they completely overreact, but the lines and things are still bigger. So you can say, oh man, this team's not that good. But remember, in college football, you don't get a preseason. Yep. So if you looked bad week 1, there's an overcorrection to week 2 and then a massive overcorrection to week 3. So I guess I can kind of tell who's pretty good and who's not. But, here's the problem. Look at the rankings, like the AP poll, the coaches poll. Who moved up? Like Florida State. Okay, they bombed who? East Texas State, Texas A&M, 77-0. Okay, so they're good, so they move up. Yeah, but Texas A&M. I can't remember. Tennessee played some, cupcake central directional state or something, and they move up because they look good. Because when you put 66 on the board, everyone thinks you're really good. But it's all fake. It's all a sugar rush. So if you can kind of bite through that, and I'm going forward. Last week, I loved all the overs. Yes, I did miss Oklahoma State. You were right in terms of Oregon. But the over crushed without even a question mark. Like a team like Texas Tech, they're killing everyone. So they're playing bad teams, but they're trying to make a point. Texas Tech's always going to be like the over-unders are the place to go at the moment more than just the point, just the ATS.
It's a great point. We do have some more higher profile games this week. Last week was not exactly the sexiest slate. But let's start.
Turned out to be pretty good, though.
It was. We had some interesting games. I thought Michigan, Oklahoma proved to be intriguing. I think Oklahoma. Maybe I'm a little bit too down on John Mateer. I need to give him a little more cred.
Well, here's your thing about John Mateer. If you want to fade, if you can fade a Heisman, because everyone thinks, oh no, Heisman guy now. Take a gander at what he's got up next in the next 6 weeks. And to the positive for the Heisman thing for Mateer, if he rocks against this schedule, game over. Yep. But he's probably not going to.
And that's a good lead-in because Oklahoma, right? We talk about these sandwich games all the time, Pete. Oklahoma coming off a tough physical game against Michigan. I thought they handled that game. But still, Michigan's a physical football team, and it was still a one-score game in the fourth quarter. And I think Oklahoma almost muffed the punt. Which would have given Michigan a chance to get in there for the tie. You get Auburn next week at home, which is going to obviously be a tough game in the SEC. And this week, you just, travel across the country to little old Temple. 3-touchdown spread. Actually, I think it's north of 3 touchdowns. It feels like one of those spots where you want to take Temple, hold your nose and plug your eyes and just pray that Temple can keep it close. But that Oklahoma defense looks legit.
I think the comp first of all, Temple's pretty good. Casey Keeler was the head coach at Sam Houston, went there, and all of a sudden they're a little more competent. They're a little bit better. They, like you said, they're pretty good, enough to put a few points on the board. And the line isn't in the stratosphere. I think the comp is last year. I think it was Missouri went to UMass, and the line was something insane like 46 or 47. And it's like, well, yeah, they're making this crazy trip in the middle of everything, and why are you going to Amherst, Massachusetts, and all that kind of stuff. They're probably just gonna not even try, but they're still way better than UMass, and they played that way. I take Oklahoma. Just don't mess with it, and if it doesn't work, it's not your fault. It's they're way better than Temple. Temple beat a couple of teams to start, but I think the Sooners are gonna roll in this without a problem. Just they'll come out. They could win this game 35-3, and there you go.
It scares me because these are the spots where if you are a little bit unfocused, right, you're on the road, it's an early start time game, it's a noon Eastern start. I think they're playing at the Link, which is going to be like a cavern. No one's going to be there. The place is going to be empty. Tricky spot. Not a run to the window, bet Oklahoma with all your money type spot. I think it's pass game for me, but I would actually, frankly, lean Temple. I really would. I think it's kind of a sleeper spot.
You've been right whenever I contradict you. You've been right so far on these, but yeah.
I'm scared to back a team that has such bigger games in front of them that this is an easy spot to overlook. Like,
it's not a focus thing. It's not a focus thing as much as it is, do these coaching staffs get their work in and get out? Yeah. So if they're up 28-0 at halftime, they sit Mateer and they kind of pack it in and just kind of stop. Now that goes one of two ways. Either they let their backups play for real because you want to get your 2s and 3s to be up to speed, or but again, I would just say watch out for Oklahoma because that defense is probably not going to allow more than 10 points. So go from there with that.
Very true. Good point. The other intriguing spot, I think, is Clemson at Georgia Tech. And the reason I think it's
there's your stay away from game. Jeez.
Well, you got Clemson's quarterback situation, Georgia Tech's quarterback situation, which is very unsettled. Yep. I'll be honest, Philo, I know it was Gardner-Webb, but 378 last week. That's a school record for Georgia Tech. They're not known for their passing offense. Do we think Buster Faulkner? I guess it would probably be Brent Key, but do we think Buster Faulkner pushes for Philo this week with Haynes King kind of on the shelf a little bit?
The problem is King is a difference maker. Yeah. He's like a 19-year veteran. He's been through all the wars. And those kind of guys tend to keep teams in the game. I would stay far, far away from this thing. I'm not a believer in Clemson at all. So if I have to pick it, and I do, I kind of like Georgia Tech to pull this off just because the other parts of the puzzle, or at least I'm never going to say they're going to cover the 3.5, but and lose with a 3.5. But I think they could win this outright. But again, there's too many X factors, and like you kind of alluded to, there's so many games on the board that if you're throwing this in a bucket of lots of games, okay, that's one unit. But if you're just going for something hardcore like this is my pick of the week, I'm not quite there.
I took 3.5 for Georgia Tech. There aren't many 3.5s left. I do now. We're recording this show on Wednesday afternoon. There is one left right now at BetMGM that I see. Maybe when you're watching this show, it won't be there anymore. I apologize if it is. If you can find a 3.5 with Georgia Tech, the rest of the market is painted 3. I feel like that's a decent bet, and I feel like when we get to, again, noon Eastern kick on Saturday, the 3.5s will be gone, especially if Haynes King plays. I think that's why the market was kind of shading a little bit towards Clemson, because we just didn't know what King's status was. There's a debate to play him even if he's a little bit banged up, because if you play him, right, Pete, he's a running quarterback. The clock stays moving. You keep your defense off the field. It shortens the game. You have a more upset potential. Whereas Philo, I think, probably has a little bit of a higher ceiling with the offense, but the floor is considerably lower because he's very inexperienced and he just hasn't played a whole lot. So,
and if you're Georgia Tech, who do you get next week? Temple. Yeah. So you get Temple at home and then Wake Forest and then Virginia Tech, who's not that great. So, if you're going to sit King, you got 3 weeks to get him ready for Duke at Duke, who's actually pretty good in Syracuse. But, here's the thing. Look at this Georgia Tech schedule. At Temple, out of conference game, obviously doesn't matter. At Wake Forest, winnable. Virginia Tech, winnable. At Duke, a little more 50-50 than you might like, but that's obviously winnable. Syracuse at home, absolutely gettable. At North Carolina State, gettable. At Boston College, dangerous but gettable. And Pitt. There's no Miami. There's no Florida State. There's no SMU. There's no Louisville. This is it. So if you're going to get the main man out there, get him out there for this game. You don't want. He's a college kid. You don't want to risk anything, obviously. But if you're going to take your chance now, and then you sit him for 3 weeks. And, you sit him for Temple, definitely, if you have to, because who cares? It's a non-conference game. You're going to win at home. So, I'd give it a go. So, again, I like Georgia Tech, just not wild about it.
I'll leave it at this. I think if Philo, now who knows, if King's banged up and Philo does play, and Buster Faulkner with this he's a genius. He got a big extension in the offseason. And to me, when you extend and you keep your offensive coordinator like that and you pay him head coach money, you're ready to win right now. If Philo plays and the game plan's good and they win this game, man, talk about Buster Faulkner. Hey, I mean, he's going to be the hot ticket for every head coaching opening in the country, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of them like that. So it'll be a moment for Georgia Tech. But yeah, like I said, this is it. If they win this, then game on for Georgia Tech. Let me throw another team at you where with what's coming up next, and I know you're not going to be able to speak well of a Houston Christian or an Indiana State.
No.
But it kind of goes to a larger overall point in these types of games where Nebraska's killing teams so far.
Yeah.
I mean, they got by Cincinnati, and it was no big deal. That was a tough game. But next week, they get Michigan at home. After that, Michigan State at Maryland, at Minnesota, Northwestern, USC at home, at UCLA, and then at Penn State. So, it's all about Michigan next week. They just took out Akron, it's Akron, whatever. But
Akron
they're
might
better
be the
than
worst team in the FBS besides Kent State.
Yeah, that's UMass or Kent State. So Akron's right up there. But they're well coached, and Akron usually has a way of keeping things close under Joe Moorhead, and they got housed 68-0. I know Houston Christian 50 something. I mean, they're going to win. Nebraska's going to put 50 on the board. So these massive spreads in general, the trend you asked before what's happening is the FBS teams are kind of housing the FCS ones because they're getting their time. Look at Ohio State last week. Again, look at Florida State, West Texas A&M. Look at the true layup games. Indiana is coming up on Friday night. They're going to cover that 45.5 against Indiana State. And if they don't, it's only because Kurt Signe decides to shut it down after a 35-point first quarter. So there is that sort of risk. But in general, we're getting to the end of the FCS gravy train here. If you put the same amount of money on all the FBS teams to cover, you're going to end up ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a certain level of confidence with some of these high major teams that are not the tops of their conference when they get into these spots against the low of the low, like Nebraska facing Akron. And I think the NIL era has changed this. Nebraska would never take Akron seriously in they wouldn't pour it on in a normal non-NIL game. But now I'm telling you, these kids come in, they're getting paid. They want to show off for the next recruit. All these recruiting visits come in. I think there's a certain level of blowout potential. I am old enough
to have sat in the Minneapolis Metrodome when Nebraska and Turner Gill and Irving Fryer and Mike Rozier are playing Minnesota, and on the Metrodome scoreboard, 21, 21, 21, 24, 84-13. Yeah. Talking about pouring it on. Nebraska has a history of not caring about stuff like that, and especially for a program that's gone through so much pain and suffering for them over the last few years. There are teams like that right now just want to say, "Hey, look at me," and they want to just get out. If you're Georgia, you don't need to do any flexing. You don't care. But if you're Nebraska, you make the fan base happy. If you're Michigan State going against a Youngstown State this weekend, absolutely, you want a game like that. So again, if in general. This is the last week we get these, before we go to the NFL-like spreads. This is the last week we get those monster games where usually I'm the guy who's like, hey, if you're giving me, I'm walking in the building up 45.5 to nothing, I'll take my chances. Well, not when it comes to these FCS games.
All right, what do we think about this Power 4 versus Power 4 game? Wisconsin and Alabama. Bama's a 3-touchdown favorite. I don't really know what to make of Bama just yet. They obviously showed us, they're bad in week 1 against Florida State. And then they showed us, how good they can be against, little old UL Monroe. I don't want to overlook a 73-0 game, but it's UL Monroe, so I don't want to go crazy about it.
Remember, Louisiana Monroe is not, Bryant Vincent's a great head coach. And last year, if I look this up, I think they screwed someone up. That was Alabama deciding they cared about Louisiana Monroe. And by the way, little fun stat on Louisiana Monroe. You know who lost to Louisiana Monroe? Alabama in Nick Saban's first season lost to ULM. So this is a program that's had a little stuff in the past. Got housed by Texas last year. God, where do they gave someone a hard time?
No, not last year. Maybe it was 2 years.
Well, we had Army to start the season. They pushed someone
They
up.
played
They
App
started
State tough
Oh,
a
they
couple
beat
years
actually
ago.
James. It's like kind of deep cuts, but beating
JMU.
James Madison was a big deal.
JMU's a good team.
Yeah, so this is, I guess what I'm saying is, yes, they were supposed to get destroyed, but that was Alabama deciding like, hey, we're tired of listening to everything for a while. We're going to hear this. I've gone back and forth on this. Wisconsin. They don't have it. I mean, they still the only thing that scares me about this game, by not just outright saying, of course, Alabama, is that Wisconsin's starting to do Wisconsin things again. They're pass rush, time of possession, no penalties, not turning the ball over. Yep. So if you start with that, that's kind of what used to make Wisconsin the thing, where they weren't explosive or anything like this, but they did all the other stuff right, and they're starting to do that. What they are not doing is playing, getting that explosive offense going. They don't have the running game that they used to have. They don't have the killer running backs that Wisconsin normally have. And with Billy Edwards Jr., very questionable at the quarterback for this. Again, this is one of those where I'm kind of thinking, don't overthink this. It might be a fight for about 2.5 quarters, and then Alabama's going to be like, enough of this, and they just go off. And they did last year, so they didn't have a problem with but that was with Jalen Milroe, a little bit different team. At home, I think I am overthinking this, and I just talked myself and saying, yeah, of course, Alabama. Come on.
No, this is Bama or pass, no doubt. And I know they play Georgia, but it's not until 2 weeks. They get a whole week to prepare for Georgia. They'll go into their bye week next week. This is the game where you say, all right, Bama is back. Now, here was my handicap on Bama coming into the year. They might have the best defense in the country. I think I might change that now and say I think Georgia's defense might be the best in the country. They're just so young. I just don't know how good they can be just yet. But, man, that defense looks really good on tape. But I think Bama's defense, that was just a brain fart game. Like, they just weren't prepared. You give Malzahn all the credit. And I think this defense is going to be legit. And, man, you watched Wisconsin's offense struggle against Miami of Ohio to move the ball. How are they going to move it against Bama?
Yeah, and as I keep saying, how stupid do you have to be to start your season in Tallahassee, Florida, or Columbus, Ohio?
Yeah, I don't know the backstory behind the scheduling.
It's I get what they're doing, but that you play Louisiana and Monroe first, and then you play Florida State. If you're
do you
Texas,
think if that happened, Pete? Do you think Bama wins that game against Florida State?
Yeah, because these teams don't have their sea legs under them yet. They're not used to getting going, and obviously Florida State came out just raging red hot. And sometimes you get one of those teams that have everything happening for them at once. You have the energy, you have the focus, you have the game plan. And that just all kicked in for Florida State in that one game, and now everyone loves them a little too much.
Yep.
But, yeah, I do think it would probably be a little different. I'm not saying they beat Florida State necessarily, but certainly there was no energy in that Alabama team coming out against Florida State. I do think you're going to see that coming up here against against Wisconsin a little bit. So I think Wisconsin keeps it relatively close because they do have guys, and they do have their defense is playing well so far.
Yeah.
I know it's Miami University, but DeQuan Finn is a all MAC caliber quarterback, but struggling like they did for the first 45, 50 minutes against Middle Tennessee, that wasn't good. So Alabama in this with the points.
Ranked versus ranked, really good one here down in Miami between South Florida and Miami. I'm assuming Hard Rock Stadium is going to be absolutely jammed. I was questioning the home field advantage, what they would have against Notre Dame. But it might have
USF fans there. It might have Bulls
and
fans
the fan
going.
base obviously now is very fired up. I mean, they're a legit college football playoff contender. I think the Miami defense really is the story here. Can they shut down Byron Brown in this USF rushing attack?
I think so. I mean, we're all keep forgetting. We said this in our first thing. We all forget how great Carson Beck really is as a pro prospect, and the talent they have on that team. And the best thing that could have happened is the win over Florida, because not that they don't take every game seriously, but when you have 18 to 24-year-old kids, they tend to wake up a little bit more. Oh, y'all did that to Florida? Okay, well, so it's a little bit the mindset of, okay, we actually have to think about this and focus, and maybe we'd like to just destroy this team and say, hey, Gators, we just kind of beat you in that way. So there's a whole lot of other parts to this. So USF is good. They go 1,000 miles per hour.
Yep.
So part of the problem is with that lightning fast offense, their defense might get gassed if Miami just leans on that offensive line and just starts rumbling early on. I'm going to say Miami. Again, I'm a Power 4 snob. But I love this USF team. I mean, you look what they are going to probably be that 12th team in the college football playoffs.
Yeah.
So, but I do think they're going to play well. But Miami, I think, will absolutely wake up and be good in this.
Yeah, this one opened 15, got bet up to, I think, 18 before we started to see some Bulls money in the market. I liked your point about kind of where USF is as a program right now. Last week, no one expected them to go into Florida and win. Now, the radar, the antenna is up. You know, you go into the swamp and win, you're not going to sneak up on Miami the next week.
No.
In fact, that was the first line of my notes in this game. USF put the country on notice last week.
Yeah,
So,
now, look, it's on the
big.
CW, so it doesn't really count, but it's...
I'm sure
but
the
yeah.
Miami film, I'm sure the film made it to the Miami staff just the same.
Yeah, God bless these guys who have jobs there, but man, that's a tough watch in the CW world. But
Hey, isn't
anyway,
it interesting? I was talking about this. I heard this on a show the other day, and I was talking about it with a buddy. USF's resume for their CFP is already better than Indiana's last year, right? You beat ranked Boise. You beat Florida on the road. Like, who did Indiana beat last year?
How about boy? Well, they did beat house the two national championship teams from the year before, and they did destroy everyone in their path. So Indiana's actually the wrong comp that everyone SEC people keep using. How about this? Boise State hasn't beaten a power team in the regular season
Boise's not
since
making the CFP this year. It's
like
not happening.
1958 or something.
It can't
like
happen. UNLV's better, I think.
Well, they had their shot last year, but like these teams don't win as much. They beat their Power 4 team on the road, so that's about as good a resume win as you can get. And look, this is kind of off the topic a little bit, but Big 12 expansion. I have been screaming for years that the Big 12 has blown it so far by not getting South Florida. It's a massive school. It's commuter a lot, but humongous
Very true.
base of students. It's in Tampa. You have the I-4 corridor with UCF as a natural rival.
Yeah.
You get the TV market, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And you have the recruiting there. So that and UNLV is in UNLV. Why isn't UNLV going to the Pac-12? Because it's holding out for the Big 12. And you're crazy not to get Vegas and Tampa, and I would say San Diego State too, and get San Diego. But Vegas and Tampa, then all of a sudden, if you're the Big 12, now you got two big markets where fan bases who will travel to both cities. And in the expansion world, I'm shocked that hasn't been done yet.
It's a great point. Look at that. Big 12 commissioner, Pete Fiutak over here.
If they just asked me, I have got all the answers. Just trust me.
I love it. All right. Let's hit some other interesting games. Another ranked versus ranked. A&M at Notre Dame. This was a great game last year, right? Notre Dame went into College Station, got a big win, and then lost to NIU the next week. Ho-hum. Now it's return the favor time. I think Notre Dame is good enough to hold up against what is a really good Texas A&M offense. I think their defense is good enough to hold up. It's the A&M defense that I'm a little bit nervous about, giving up $140 a game on the ground, Pete. This is a really interesting number, been kind of bouncing around 7 all week. What do you think?
Double digits. Look, the NIU game was Notre Dame just kind of playing or effing around and finding out. Here's the crazy stat I came up with, and it's somewhere. I'm going to get it wrong, but I wrote it up on the preview on CFN. Is Notre Dame, when it doesn't run the ball more than 28 times, it has lost like the last 19 games going back to like 2009 or something. It's like this bizarre stat that whenever it's a little chicken and egg when it comes to this, like they didn't run it. They forgot to run against Northern Illinois. That's why they lost. They didn't get enough carries in because when the carries come in, everything else works. They didn't get enough. They only got like 25 carries in against Miami. So after all the blowback, you didn't run Jeremiah Love enough. Well, they didn't run Jeremiah Love enough last year. He only got 14 carries in last year's game against Texas A&M. I think they start out just bashing away with that offensive line. They've had 2 weeks off. And now they can't focus just on C.J. Carr because he proved against Miami that he can throw a little bit. I think Notre Dame comes out right away with that offensive line and bashes away. I think the defense rested up. That again, the time off is going to matter. Don't overthink the 7. Don't think a 7.5. I think Notre Dame wins this like 31-17-ish.
Yeah, it's below the 7 now. I did see some pretty sharp people give out A&M plus 7 earlier this week, so that's why it's off the 7, and you're getting Notre Dame minus 6.5. Here's my biggest question. Actually, I have 2 big questions, and maybe Big 12 commissioner / Notre Dame athletic director Pete Fiutak can answer them for me. The first question is, can Notre Dame run the ball with Jeremiah Love, and can they actually give him a real workload? Not like a preseason workload. Like, can we get this dude 20, 25 touches?
That's not how they work. Remember, Jadarian Price is an NFL back.
He is, but Love is better, right? Like, I love Jadarian Price, but Love is the best back in the country, period.
He is, and last year they had Riley Leonard who ran, and Carr proved he can run a little bit. So last year, and so how Notre Dame kind of screwed up in their Miami game, because the whole game plan was we're going to keep it tight, and then in the 95 degree with 10,000% humidity, they're going to do what they did against Texas, and they're going to wear down Miami, and then over the last 20 minutes we're going to go all Love. So they kind of kept the workload light, and then he was going to get everything. And they tried, because what happened was all of a sudden the game plan went wrong, and the game got away from them, and they had to throw to get back to do it. And they still almost won.
Yeah.
But you saw what they did is, okay, crap, we got to get this guy involved. And they tried throwing it to Love, and they're not as good when they're getting Love. They threw 4 straight times to him or something. So they tried to get him the ball, but the game plan that they had coming into it didn't quite work. This time, I think, like you said, I'm going to front load Love in the first quarter, kind of chill him out for a little while, and then use him as Mariano Rivera over the last 15 minutes. That's how because he doesn't get a lot of carries, and he didn't last year either, but they don't have a Riley Leonard to run the ball this year. More Price, but I think you do see that the running game will work this week. They're good. I mean, Texas A&M's got the defense, it's got the coaching, but kind of like my thing with there's Texas A&M, there's South Carolina, there's a couple of programs where, okay, I'll believe it all when it actually happens. Texas Tech, I mean, we've seen this. Nobody's done the least with the most than Texas A&M. They're very good. They could absolutely win it. I think Notre Dame comes out and looks the part again, and then rips through the rest of its schedule and goes to play for the national championship.
That would be insane if they made it back to the Natty this year. The second question I have is how the play calling is for CJ Carr. Because the one thing I noticed in the Miami game, and maybe this is why they lost the game, probably not. I think Miami was better in that game. But they really only attempted one downfield pass the whole game. Only one throw of over 20 yards the whole game. It was very dink and dunk, very, as Marcus Freeman actually said it during the halftime interview, quick access throws, free access throws. Eventually, A&M's going to take that away. And if you don't threaten them vertically, these are still SEC athletes crashing the line of scrimmage, taking away your run game, taking away the quick slants, the bubbles, the screens. Can CJ Carr stretch the field vertically against this A&M defense?
Well, the one time he did it against Miami, again, they almost won. Remember, they tied it up. They were down. It was over. And you have an NFL offensive line in Miami with, a couple of first-round draft picks up there. You have an NFL starting quarterback in Carson Beck, and they still couldn't put the game away until late when Beck showed why he is an NFL player and got him in the position. They got the win. But again, Carr got the job done. The plan kind of worked, except the defense just could not come up with that one stop. So you do have the offensive line on Texas A&M. It's going to try to bash away on this defensive front for Notre Dame. And Carr has proven that he's kind of a fearless guy, and that kind of came out in the Miami game. So Carr certainly was not the problem. It was the lines that wore down, and they melted in the heat. So it's going to be beautiful out in South Bend. It's supposed to be like 75 degrees out and perfect, and so that's not going to be a problem this week.
Yeah, I think 7, I'll take A&M. Under 7, It's a pass for me. If you can find a 7, maybe it's because I just don't believe in Carr yet, but I'm wrong.
Don't worry about that. If either you like him or you don't, and it's either going to be Notre Dame covers or it doesn't. If you like Notre Dame, don't even worry about the points.
That I agree with. If you like Notre Dame, don't worry about them winning by 3.
They're going to win by, I think they win by 12-ish to 14. Again, like 31-17-ish, I think is where this comes
I do bet numbers, not teams. I am more of the analytical gambler. Pete's more of the, I'm going to tell you straight who's going to win the game, and you figure out the rest on your own. That's kind of the vibe of the show. That's why it works for us. I think it's 7, I'll take A&M. But at 6.5, I think it's a pass. Florida at LSU. I mean, can it get any worse for Florida? I'm pretty sure the entire fan. That's true. It could definitely get worse.
You ask. It can get and can and will. Try this one. Try this one out. Not only this is why that game sucked for them. That USF game sucked because LSU, and then next week they go to Miami, and then Texas, and then at Texas A&M, and then Mississippi State, who can play a little now, and then Georgia. There's your next few weeks. 2 words, Lane Kiffin, your new Gator head coach, coming off of that.
I don't think he's coming to Oxford. I'll be honest.
No,
I don't think he's leaving Oxford.
They screwed up. They should have taken him at Tuscaloosa. I
agree with, but I think so. I listen to a great SEC podcast. These guys are all over the SEC. Brooks Austin, film guy, they do a great job. Shout them out. And they're very connected with a lot of the assistant coaches and kind of the maneuverings behind the scenes. And from what they say, that Lane is so kind of on this straight and narrow path now that he's gone sober. And Oxford was a big apparently his community and how he's kind of handled himself in Oxford's been a big reason why he's been able to kind of stay on that path. So they don't think he's going to leave for any other job besides Alabama, which
I'll tell you this one sometime off the air. We will discuss Lane Kiffin things. The other thing is I've gone down like 4 times now to speak to the Red Elephants Club at Alabama, and to a person, they're all in love with Lane Kiffin.
Why do you think they won't hire him?
I don't know why they didn't last time. You don't want to be the guy to follow Saban, I think, but that's not really how
DeBoer's learning that the hard way right now.
Yeah, that's not how Kiffin works, though. He's not afraid of stuff like that. He's got a good, but I've always argued. I've been a Kiffin fan, and I've always thought he's got a raw deal. He had the one good year for Tennessee in the midst of a whole lot of blah. He's the one who got USC when they were in the Reggie Bush coma penalty phase, and everyone forgets that they had a huge year, and then they got all the sanctions and screwed him up.
Yeah.
And then Ole Miss. You don't win at Ole Miss. We always assume that Ole Miss is this monster football program. He's had the best run outside of a couple of Arch Manning runs in the '60s and stuff.
Yeah.
Lane Kiffin's probably had the best run in the history of Mississippi football. So he's a phenomenal head coach who, when it's his time, when he's ready to go someplace bigger, that's it. And you got to believe that Florida, and if Napier doesn't turn this around, but it could be just Napier enough to pull this off against LSU. I am not 1,000% sold on this LSU team like everyone else is, but I think they do get this done against Florida.
Well, the number's kind of tantalizing you at 7 and a hook, right? They're kind of asking you to take Florida here. I do think Florida is a very volatile team because I think DJ Lagway's upside is to the frickin' moon. The problem is he hasn't practiced because he's been hurt. And the decisions he's making on the field look like a quarterback who is very talented, who trusts his talent, but just hasn't played a lot. He hasn't had the reps in practice or on the field to make those decisions. Like, again, I don't want to get too in the weeds of the X's and the O's, but like he's making decisions that a quarterback at his level should never make. Like throwing the deep post on a route where you're rolling to your right and you're throwing back to your left. And it's like, these are just like boneheaded decisions that you should never make. But I just think he trusts his talent and his experience isn't quite there yet. Here's the problem for LSU, though. A couple injuries this week, right? Tight end, their stud tight end who caught the game-winning touchdown against Clemson, Trey'Dez Green, questionable. And their starting center, which is never a good thing, especially when you have a quarterback that's not as mobile and your running game's been a little bit, down in the dumps lately. I would not be shocked if Florida wins this game. I would not be shocked if Florida wins this game. Now, I don't think they're going to, but I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I'm going to sheepishly go with LSU and give away the points, but I'm not happy about it. There are certain games I would love a lot more, but this one, like you said, if we're talking next week and Napier went Napier and they pulled this off and all of a sudden they're back.
They need to run the freaking ball. Their best 2 players are Ball and Jackson. They're running backs.
Well, and that's the problem with the Napier era is that the assumption was the offense he ran at Arizona State and then at Louisiana was going to kick in at Florida, and it just hasn't worked.
It's true. All right, 2 more games, both in the SEC. One of them kind of a sneaky good game. The other one is the game of the week. Let's get to the sneaky good one first. Vandy at South Carolina. Man, I'll tell you, Diego Pavia is now all of a sudden like Peyton Manning. Like he's chucking it all over the field. Like Vandy's got a vertical game now, which I think is intriguing because to me they were kind of a 5-yard in a cloud of dust offense last year. South Carolina, I don't want to overlook what happened last week because they gave up 6 explosives in the passing game against South Carolina State. But it was also a weird rain game, right? It was coming off their big game in week 1. Like I don't want to go crazy with saying that they're bad now, but their defense definitely didn't show great last week against an in-state rival.
I am going to still refuse to believe Vanderbilt's that good. It's like yes, they are the type of team that will rise up and do something weird like last year because Pavia is that good, and they do have enough talent on both sides of the ball. But it's still the team that lost to Georgia State last year. Yeah. So it's just kind of a freaky team. And then the thing that the public has not really jumped on, I guess, with this line is that they just destroyed Virginia Tech, and South Carolina struggled against the Hokies in the opener. It's almost like the life was taken out of the Hokies with that loss to South Carolina. I'm going with South Carolina because I can't. It's a me thing. Go against it. I'm not going to argue. I like Pavia, but when Vanderbilt doesn't work, it doesn't work, and they don't have the lines or the defense compared to South Carolina. I'm still waiting for Lenora Sellers to look like this be-all, end-all guy that he's supposed to be, but it's not enough points. I'm going to just go Gamecocks and just assume it's right. And if I'm wrong, Pavia.
Yeah, Pavia's kind of got this it factor to him that makes him really hard to quantify because he shows up bigger, I think, in the bigger games. And I think this Vandy offense, like, they just want to drag you into the mud and keep you there all day. It's a really frustrating offense to play against. And we'll see. South Carolina, again, gave up a ton of explosives last week to South Carolina State. It was rainy. There was a delay.
And the focus on that is bare minimum. It's You're just, right. Sometimes they get their work in and just, all right, we got our paycheck. Here is your money. Let's get out of here.
All right, speaking of getting the work in, Georgia at Tennessee. Awesome game this week. Georgia's about a 3.5-point favorite. I'm seeing some 4s start to pop up in the market. Big move early in the week, Pete, right? Tennessee was a 6.5-point dog. I even saw some 7s. Got bet down immediately until 3.5. Didn't see a 3, right? I think at 3, the sharp money will just flood in on Georgia. I don't think we get a 3. I think 3.5 is the best price you'll find on Georgia this week. Kirby Smart owns Josh Heupel. Like, what am I missing here?
Oh, it's crazy. They haven't won since they've won the last 16. I think it is.
He's 4-0 against them ATS since he took over at Tennessee, and all of those lines were all 8, 9, 10, 20 points. So you're getting a discount on Georgia this week.
Yeah, literally, I think that as a program, Tennessee can't beat Georgia. It is a 16-year run of Bulldog wins. And look, again, fine. Syracuse is not that great. They needed everything in the bag to come back against UConn. And East Tennessee State, 72 points. Here's my crazy storyline of the week. Everyone's like, well, they won the Nico Yamalava, thing because Nico's struggling at UCLA and, Tennessee. Well, this is the week that I think you're going to see, they kind of miss having the NFL guy there as opposed to Joey Aguilar, who's good, but welcome to the Georgia defense. I think it's a lower scoring game. I like the under on this, and I like Georgia to pull out. Here, my world of betting and my world of college football, especially, do not F with a streak. If the gods of college football, however you want to confine, are telling you that certain teams have just the other team's number, if they won 16 in a row and you're going to go against that, like, that's on you. So if I'm taking 16 in a row, the world is telling you something about how these programs operate. And if you get it wrong, not your fault. It's something mystical that goes beyond us. So go Georgia. The line's low enough. Go Georgia. Give away the points. And if it doesn't work, not your fault. It's something bigger.
Yeah, I'm laying 3.5. That's actually my favorite side of the week. I wrote it up for the website. Please read it. I do extensive work on the write-ups every week. I do a lot of research. In fact, for example, here you go. Offensive line for Georgia. Left tackle, Monroe Freeling. First-round pick. Absolute stud at left tackle. The center, Drew Bobo. You might recognize that name because he's the son of Mike Bobo, who's a former quarterback, now the current OC at Georgia. Very high football IQ. That's the guy you want playing center. And the right guard, Dontrell Glover. Keep an eye on that name. He had the highest graded blocking score of any freshman last week at the guard position. So Georgia's very young.
So you're saying Georgia has NFL talent? That's a new one.
What a shocker. And how about this? On defense, I think they're even better, and they're significantly younger. They have 4 guys from the grades that look like first or second round picks, and they're all like sophomores. So I think this Georgia defense, which right now doesn't have the name recognition, right? They don't have that Jalen Carter type, oh my God, guy on their team. That's
No.
that's the one guy. But they're all really talented and really young. And what does that mean, Pete? They get better and better.
All right, so you're leading me to my bigger point, overarching point on this. So if their defense is good and the Tennessee defense is good, where are you seeing the point total right now?
I think it's right in the mid-40s. I would bet under on this game. Let me look.
I think it was the last time I checked, it was 50 or something, 50
Wow,
and a half.
is it really that high? I'd be surprised if it's that high. It is 50, right on. I see some 49 and a half, but it is 50. Yeah, I think first half under. I get scared with the full game unders because these games get wacky late, but first half under for sure. The first quarter unders have also been a really fun bet. Here's why I like first quarter unders. There's no urgency. First and goal at the 1 yard line. They'll just let the clock run down at the end of the quarter.
I'd like to introduce you to Oregon, Oklahoma State too.
Yeah, well, you can
that
blame
went
Mike Gundy
that
for
went over.
You can
That went
blame
crazy
Mike
on the
Gundy for
first
that.
two drives.
Yeah. I am seeing 10s in the market. I would prefer. Oh no, I do see a 10.5 at DraftKings. First quarter under 10.5. Georgia, Tennessee. I think that's a fantastic wager. Fantastic wager.
I usually enjoy overs in week 3 because I do think that because you do have these wild things. Again, my belief in like these FBS and FCS games, if the heavy favorite can almost to do all the heavy lifting and cover most of it by itself, then go for it. And they may be like a Texas Tech will just cover it, or Oregon last week. They can just take care of it all by themselves. But this week, this under, and going back before, Florida LSU, I think that's an under. That's another game. It's kind of it's 48.5, but that kind of feels like it's going to be played in the lowish 20s, one team like 27, 16-ish, 17-ish. I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of points in that.
I agree. Yeah, I think Georgia's probably of all the games this week. First of all, it's the best game on the board, obviously. I think USF Miami's right there in intrigue, but I mean, let's be honest, 2 ranked teams in the SEC. Georgia's a national champion.
I think Texas A&M Notre Dame's going to take center stage in my. I mean,
yeah, you got 3 really good games this week, ranked versus ranked. Should be a really
Georgia in Georgia, Tennessee. It's an SEC game. It's going to be fun.
All right, good stuff. That's Pete. I'm Jared. Good luck this week with your bets. We will see you next week for our Lineups College Football Show.